Most people assume that if something important is discovered, someone will explain it. A press conference. A report, an official answer. But history shows something very different. Some discoveries don't disappear because they are wrong. They disappear because they don't fit. This story begins inside archived satellite data. Files stored for years, reviewed once, then quietly forgotten. During a routine reanalysis, researchers noticed something unusual, a small inconsistency. Easy to ignore. At first, it looked like a technical issue, a sensor error, a corrupted frame, but the same anomaly appeared again and again across different regions, across different years. That's when it stopped being a coincidence. What made this unsettling wasn't the shape of the anomaly, it was the location. Remote areas, no cities, no infrastructure, no recorded human activity. Yet every time it appeared, surrounding data changed. Magnetic readings fluctuated. Temperature measurements became unstable. In several cases, nearby instruments failed without explanation. The official conclusion was simple, inconclusive. The files were archived. No investigation followed. No public mention was made. Years later, independent analysts reopened these same records with better tools, higher resolution mapping, and they noticed something the original reports overlooked. The anomaly followed a pattern. The same intervals, the same environmental conditions, the same type of disruption, as if it was being triggered. Some scientists suggested rare natural phenomena, others proposed unknown atmospheric behavior, but none of the explanations answered the most troubling question. Why did this only occur in places where no human presence had ever been documented? No settlements, no roads, no history, which led to a possibility no official report addressed. If this phenomenon wasn't natural, and it wasn't human-made, then what caused it? And more importantly, why were these files archived instead of investigated further? Because this was only the beginning, and what would be discovered later would make these early anomalies look insignificant. The archive files didn't raise alarms at first. They were treated as isolated incidents, unrelated, unimportant, but that changed when analysts began comparing data across decades. What they found was impossible to ignore. The same anomaly appeared long before modern satellites existed. Older imaging systems, lower resolution, yet the same disruption was visible. This meant one thing. Whatever caused it had been occurring for far longer than anyone realized. Researchers expanded the search. They looked beyond satellite imagery into environmental records, geological surveys, atmospheric logs, and a pattern emerged. Every recorded event was followed by subtle but permanent changes in the surrounding area. Soil composition shifted, vegetation growth became irregular. Animal movement patterns changed abruptly. These effects remained long after the anomaly itself disappeared, which suggested something critical. This phenomenon wasn't passing through, it was interacting. When timestamps were synchronized with unrelated monitoring stations, another detail surfaced. Several events occurred shortly after unexplained signals were detected. The signals were brief, low frequency, and never repeated. At the time, they were dismissed as background interference, instrument error, cosmic, noisy. But when placed alongside the satellite data, the timing was exact. This connection was never mentioned in official summaries. Instead, both data sets were archived separately, labeled unrelated. filed away. As analysts continued digging, they uncovered internal notes attached to the records. Short, vague, unfinished. Phrases like source unknown, cause undetermined, and further analysis not recommended. That final note raised serious questions. Why would further analysis be discouraged? Some researchers believed the phenomenon posed no immediate threat. Others feared the opposite, because if these events were connected and if the signals were intentional, then this wasn't a natural anomaly. It was a response. And that possibility changed everything, especially when one final detail came to light. Every recorded signal originated from areas where no transmitting equipment had ever been installed. No infrastructure, no facilities, no logical source, which led to a conclusion no one was prepared to accept. These events weren't random, they weren't natural, and they weren't accidents. They were part of a process, and whatever was responsible was still unaccounted for. Because the most disturbing discovery was still waiting inside the archived files, and once it was uncovered, there would be no way to ignore it.
The final discovery didn't come from new data. It came from something already there, buried inside the archived files. While reviewing metadata attached to the anomalies, analysts noticed references that were never meant to be public: internal classification tags, restricted access notes, and timestamps that didn't match any known review process. Some of these files had been opened multiple times, years apart, by different departments, yet no conclusions were ever added, which suggested something unsettling. People had seen this before and chose not to document what they found. As the data was reconstructed, one final pattern became impossible to deny. Every anomaly occurred within a specific geographic alignment, not random locations, not scattered points, but positions that formed a sequence that repeated itself over time. When mapped correctly, the points created a path. Slow, deliberate, consistent, as if whatever caused these events was moving. That realization changed the interpretation of everything. This wasn't a static phenomenon. It was not an isolated reaction. It was progressive. Then came the most disturbing detail of all. The intervals between events were decreasing. At first, decades passed between occurrences, then years, then months, each event closer than the last, which raised a question no archived report attempted to answer. If this pattern continued, what came next? There were no official updates after the most recent entry, no follow-up data, no confirmation that monitoring had stopped, only silence. Some researchers believe the phenomenon has already reached its final phase. Others think the next event simply hasn't been detected yet, or worse, that it has been detected and never archived. Because the truth is, we only know what was recorded, not what was withheld. And if these anomalies were interacting with the environment, responding to signals, and following a deliberate path, then the real mystery isn't what they were. It's whether they were ever meant to be found at all. Even today, no definitive explanation exists, no official acknowledgement, no confirmed origin, only fragmented records, classified files, and unanswered questions. And that is why, even now, Archivex has no definitive answer.